All right, you ready? All right. Let us know when. Good evening, welcome to the October 13th meeting of the Charter Review Commission. First thing we're going to do tonight is have a special guest, Ted, you want to come and join us? Do a quick introduction for folks at home. This is Mr. Edward Langell. He is the Chief of Staff to Weymouth Mayor Robert Hedlund. Before that, he spent time as Finance Committee Chairman in the town of Braintree when that town went through its change of government. And even before that, he was actually on that town's government study committee, as he reminded me. So he has experience both as someone who helped the town figure out if it wanted to change the government, who was very involved when the town changed it, and now works for a community that has a mayor in office. And he's very knowledgeable when it comes to municipal government, big picture thinking, little picture thinking, and I thought he would be a really good viewpoint for us as we figure out if this is something we want to pursue or if it's something that, isn't worth more discussion, I guess. So. For those at home, just want to remind, because we're having this discussion does not mean that the commission is recommending that Abington go with a mayor. Instead, this is in response to a survey that came back with 33% saying they would be interested in one. It was a small sampling comparative to the rest of the town, but we felt we would not be doing our due diligence as a committee if we did not at least have a follow-up conversation. So this is what we're doing tonight. So, Ted, I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to tell us about?
But I will say that's similar to how it started in Braintree, was with a non-binding survey and ballot question. And Braintree ended up actually putting both options forward. The legislature actually passed both options for us, for a town manager and a mayor form of government. So, so we think we started a similar path.
Can you give us a little bit of context as to when Braintree started those conversations? Because if I remember right, their government was even different than what Abington's is now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were, I believe you have an open town meeting, right? Yeah, so we had a representative town meeting in Braintree, so it was around 250 members from the different precincts. But it evolved over time. I mean, there were always people that wanted something different and always people that didn't want any change. And I think events along the way sort of changed the tide. I remember one, when I was on the government study committee, we tried to do more piecemeal approaches to making a more efficient government. One of the last things I did before I switched from the government study committee to FinCom, we try to consolidate or make a more efficient DPW by bringing in, the engineering department and water sewer and all the different components of DPW. But then we took that to town meeting, and unfortunately at town meeting, all those different entities, a lot of, I don't know if you have the same dynamic here, but a lot of town employees, because you have an open meeting, show up, and a lot of them were elected in Braintree. So you had a lot of people protecting their turf when you try to make any even, small changes. So I think that sort of inaction became frustrating for a lot of people, led to wanting to have some change where there was more direct leadership and decision-making.
Braintree also had an executive secretary.
I did, yeah, for the Board of Selectmen. The other component, when I look back on it, and I enjoyed it because I was chair of FinCom for the last 4 years of the government, the last FinCom chair that the town had. So this board of volunteers that didn't get paid and were on their own time, we're the ones that wrote the budget instructions to the departments. So when I think of that now, I'm like, that's crazy. I mean, I loved it because I was doing that, but we're the ones that wrote those instructions. We're the ones that had all the departments come before us and make those decisions and bring it to town meeting. And 98% out of the time, and the town meeting would, pass our recommendations. So when you look at, in the last budget I did there, which was what, FY 2007 maybe, it was a $100 million budget. So you have this volunteer committee really in charge of $100 million, and that's just the operating budget, not even including water sewer, the enterprise funds.
Can I just ask a quick
Yep.
question? Did you negotiate with the unions and everything?
No, and that's the other frustrating part, and part of, what I have in my notes today is that now I do, as chief of staff. I authored the budget still, as we have a, little different relationship in Weymouth, and this is why the mayor, brought me on. I had worked with him in the State House, but I had actually left him for a few years, because I didn't love what I was, the State House, just spinning our wheels, as I would say, but was looking for a new challenge. But when he started thinking about running for mayor, he reached back out to me knowing the experience I had and how much I love local government, and asked me, he wasn't decided at that point, but asked me if I'd be interested in coming back for that. And I did, but one of the big differences, and the frustrating part about being on FinCom then, is other people were making those decisions without the input of the finances. And now I get the opportunity to not only control the budget, if you will, but make those decisions and negotiations directly. So yeah, we have unions in Weymouth, and we directly negotiate with each one, with our town solicitor and HR director.
So that's a huge amount of the budget.
It is, and it's one of the biggest impacts on an annual basis are those negotiations. And if you don't connect those dots, and you're negotiating off to the side without a budget, if you will, or without controlling the budget, it can make for a frustrating process.
So-
And that would also, when it got to town meeting, on the other side of that, if you look at the negotiators at that level, they're doing a lot of work doing those negotiations. So I'll give them credit for that, but then they come to town meeting, and it's almost like renegotiating, at town meeting, and double, guessing everything they've done, because, they're not part of the process. And so it's cumbersome, process, and it's usually, even as FinCom chair, they'd have to come and you'd have to say, no, a lot of the times. But again, you were part of the process to begin with.
What I remember, and my involvement with Braintree is I was a reporter covering the town for the Ledger in those last couple of years, is that it was a much larger sprawling government, more departments, more employees, bigger budget. The town, although it only has, 35,000 residents, during the day, it swells to, 70,000 people between all the businesses and the mall and everything else. So it was a small city being controlled by this sprawling government that lacked a captain kind of at the top. There was no kind of cohesive figure to kind of pull everyone together. It was kind of a lot of different fiefdoms. Is that accurate?
Exactly, and that was the frustrating part, like I said, and the DPW being the last example that I remember. Even when you try to consolidate that sprawled form of government, you just, everyone protected their turf, and you didn't get a lot accomplished.
What were the arguments against moving to a mayoral form?
It ranged. I mean, people see it as less direct involvement from the public and the residents. I get that. I would clarify, having been in both, that it's less open comments, because I can assure you, I hear from residents in a mayor form of government quite often. Today I just was looking at an email before this started about residents wanting more pickleball courts. So it's, you know what I mean? So it's like, and then those are, every day, all day, we hear from folks. So I think it's the more open, impact or comments that are less, but I can assure you residents still weigh in. So a lot of people thought we were, taking away a voice for some, if you will, but in reality, it's just not as public, I would say. And then you just have the historians. A lot of us have been doing this for hundreds of years, and the way we're doing it, and there's some that just find it hard to, let go of that and find the benefit in that kind of open, everyone's involved kind of meeting. But as life, if you will, evolves, you really need to make decisions in a more efficient way, I think, to keep up with what's going on around us. And so I get that and I respect it. I think, minored in history. I love it, and I love the history of all of it, and we try to protect our history. But I don't think that's reason enough to stay behind. And then, I think people worried about the power, if you will, I'll put that in quotes, going to one person, and that I get it as well. And I would say, maybe preface everything with, structure of government's not going to solve all your problems. It's still about the people that are going to be in the positions, no matter what structure you have. But I would say if you brought the same level of people, qualified, honest people, and put them into each, structure of government, I think it would be most effective in the mayor form of government, if you will. May followed closely by a strong, town manager, council, perhaps. But and again, biased only in how much, Mayor Headland and all of our administration, accomplished in the last 7 years. And I think, I can't imagine all of that being done in a different form of government.
Anybody has any other questions, please feel free to jump in at any time.
Would the size of the town matter? Weymouth is much larger than Abington.
Yep.
And I personally, if we were to choose, kind of looking towards the council manager form, do you think the size of the population matters?
I don't. I mean, unless it was, really, like 300 people, really small.
Right.
I would encourage, the focus to be on your goals. Like, what do you want to get out of your new government? Do you want that more direct leadership, that executive directly responsible to the voters every 4 years, or over those 4 years? I think you want to focus on the goals. What do you want out of a new form of government, and not so much the population or other demographic issues like that? Because I think we're pushing 60,000 in Weymouth. We're like, I think, around 20 the biggest cities, form of governments, or cities or towns. The other caveat is a lot of these towns that switch to city form of governments, I don't want to sound insultingly, but make themselves feel better by still calling themselves the town.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So we're the
Right.
city known as the town of Weymouth.
Right.
Right.
And so it's a feel-good little thing, but it's but so we're up there. But I think if you looked at, I'm just trying to think of what you're pushing 20,000-ish
Yes.
almost.
Depending on who the.
Right, so you're probably a pretty big community for an open town meeting, I'm guessing. But then maybe on the smaller side for, the mayor, but you wouldn't be I don't think you'd be the first if I recall the list correctly. So again, I would focus more on the goals you're looking to accomplish with a new form of government.
And you were kind of telling us what happened in Braintree before I interrupted you, so could you finish what happened with Braintree going to?
Yeah, so it was because there was a group, actually the government study committee that I had left by that point was actually pushing the council manager form while they had formed a mayor study group separately. And again, town meeting passed both of them, both options. And then it went to the voters, and it was pretty overwhelmingly toward the mayor. I think it was 3,900 for the mayor one, and just over 2,000 maybe for the town manager. So there were those entities out there, and then it went down to the voters. But it was I think either way it was for the same reasons. Wanting that professional management, wanting that even though the mayor's elected, it's still that professional executive, if you will, making the decisions. And I think the goal was similar. It was just, which one they chose.
Do you remember what attendance was at town meeting? I know capped at 250, but obviously not everybody showed
Yeah,
up.
no, I remember a few times where quorum was close, but I mean, we had, it was representative, so the 250, you needed the mid 100s, and I don't think we ever weren't able to meet due to lack of quorum, but, sometimes it got close, but, for a town even, that size, for 100 and whatever it was, 50 people to, be deciding that too, but again, then, you can say the same thing with, one mayor, like for us, it's 11 councilors deciding these things, but again, it's that efficiency part of it, and the more, I should say, the less people that tended to, show up at town meeting, it probably meant there was more town employees and, more influencers and protectors of their turf that ended up showing up and might have even gotten, less accomplished.
Yeah, in Weymouth, you were saying there are 11 councilors as well?
Yep.
How do they share power with the mayor?
I would like to say they don't, but no. No, they're a partner in this, but it is a strong mayor form of government. But they do have to, approve what the mayor puts forward. But it does come, from the mayor. I mean, there could be like we actually just got one this week, a citizen's petition that can go before them that they could consider. I think there's other avenues, but otherwise, it's the mayor submitting a measure for them to consider. It goes to one of their subcommittees, comes back to the full town council, for a vote. And then even appointments, by the way, so it's all board and department head appointments go before them for review, I believe the charter calls it. And they need 8 votes to reject it, so 2/3 to reject the appointments. Again, that's all board members and department heads. So that they are, they're a partner. We have to go there and make our case, for the budget or any measure we put forward, and we need their, support to go forward. If there's, I think there was one, the mayor's I think they only vetoed one measure that started, maybe through a petition. And then they have, they would take up, that as well to override it.
Does the mayor present a budget to the councilors for approval?
We do,
Okay.
every spring. And the charter, delineates the schedule. The school committee has to get it to us by a certain date, and then we have to get it to the council by a certain date. And they hold hearings or, public meetings on it, review it, and then the subcommittee, there's a budget management subcommittee that makes the 5 members, each subcommittee is 5 members of the 11, and then makes their recommendations to the full committee.
For Braintree, we'll switch back to that for a
Yep.
second. Once the decision had been made, were there any lessons that you learned or things you wish you had done differently, or like input you wish you had received? at that time?
I don't think so. I mean, overall, like wholesale, there really weren't. And I offered any help I could be to the new, folks, but at the same time, I did try to keep a distance, if you will. I didn't want to be the old guard that, stood there kind of nitpicking, and I, my final speech at, town meeting, because I had also run for council and not won. And so I plus they were, I love being FinCom chair, and although I wanted to change in government too, but, so I didn't want to, be that gadfly kind of, I wanted to let them do their job with whatever support they needed from me. And I my last speech, I said, you're in good hands with the folks that were elected and Mayor Sullivan. But I don't recall during the process anything that I would have hoped that gone differently. It's I don't think when these communities switch, to a mayor form of government, or any new, especially a mayor, I think, but any new form of government, I don't think that first mayor gets enough credit. You're building a new government that's still moving. Like you still need to provide all those services, and people are counting on that, and you're forming, a new structure while that's moving, and it's not the easiest thing. And I think the transition team and plan is huge part of that. And he had a very good one in Braintree, and I, as FinCom chair, try to leave the town in its best shape for them as I could, and we set aside money for them, and gave them enough, I think, to be successful. And then offered whatever support they needed. But yeah, I don't think they get, in Mayor Madden and Weymouth, I don't think they get enough credit for how hard it is to make that transition.
Did you notice any change, positive or negative, anything noticeable in like community engagement, voter engagement with the shift in government?
I think you had, like, initially, and whether you want to, kind of like what I was making sure I wasn't, as far as the second guesser, gadfly. I think you did have a lot of people there, waiting for something to go wrong, to point out that, but not a small thing, but can be a, loud voice. But there wasn't a lot to complain about, I don't think. And I think, people stayed engaged, maybe obviously in different ways. And they, in Weymouth, I mean, this is, the third mayor in 2/4, the sixth term. And yeah, people are still very engaged. And again, it's just maybe not in the open, in public eye, but a lot of, the civic groups and everything through them are still very active, and we interact, with all the stakeholders on a constant basis.
I know this is probably hard to answer considering your role, but other drawbacks, you think, now that you've been involved in the mayor's office? Drawbacks that maybe people wouldn't think of necessarily.
I know this, it's not a drawback per se, but it's a lot of work. It's every decision, every action that's happening in town now comes through one office, somehow or another. And yeah, you have a lot of department heads and departments that are part of that team and help it along, but everything comes through your office now. And if you want to do it successfully, it doesn't stop. It's not, a 9 to 5. I happen to be acting mayor right now, but I have the phone with me, constantly, because you just never know what's going to happen or what's going to come up. Usually it's a water main break or something,
Yeah.
but it's like, what I mean? Or we had a huge sewer break on 3A recently, and and then it's so it's just nonstop, and it's because everything like that costs money. They're like, oh, you need to come out and see this because we want to show you exactly what you're going to be deciding about. And yeah, it's not a drawback per se, but if you're not prepared for that, constant overtime, if you will, but you're not going to be successful. But otherwise, and again, I can only go by the success we've had, and I think the other part of our success, or at least Mayor Headland's, and we didn't do it during a transition, but when we came in to office 7 years ago, kept the great majority of our department heads, to a lot of their surprise. Everyone assumed, especially since there are different ends of the political spectrum, but that we were going to come in and clean house, and but that didn't make sense to us to lose that institutional knowledge. And so yeah, we had a lot of conversations with a lot of them, and our approach might have been a little different, but I think it was important to keep that. And I think it would be harder, if you came in and started over with that, because, in 7 years, we're losing, some folks that have been there a while, and you can feel it, and it makes the job harder.
So if I remember correctly, one of the original versions that the town of Braintree had suggested or considered was a mayor, but also with a town manager or a town administrator. The thought being that you needed not just that head of, that chief executive, but also the professional administrator to help run everything. And I can't remember who served there with Mayor Madden, but in Braintree, I know he brought in Peter Moran, who had experience in government, was an attorney, and now is serving as a town manager of Norwell.
Yep.
You obviously have brought in some professional administrative experience. How important is it to have an administrator along with the mayor? Because the mayor can't be
No.
the town manager.
No, and, no, it's crucial. I think it's crucial, and whatever you want to call that position, whether it's chief of staff or chief administrative officer or chief operating officer, whatever you want to call that position, you need that there. And we've had 3 mayors, and 2 of them utilized, chief of staff, and maybe, like, again, Madden, because it's the transition to the, some professional consultant. But I think when you look at it, and the mayor that didn't have a chief of staff, had an administrative person, but, was also in charge of other stuff and not just focused on that. And it was, a little less effective, I think, without that day-to-day person, because it's day-to-day, nonstop, and it's that interaction with the council, the interaction with the department heads, the interaction with all the stakeholders on a daily basis. And it's actually written into our charter, that role of chief of staff. Yeah, it is, and acting basically as the mayor with these interactions. And so, I joke, because Mayor Headland's up for re-election next year and hasn't decided whether he's running again, and everyone's asking me if I am. I want to keep doing what I'm doing, but when I think of being mayor, I know personally I'm probably going to be my own chief of staff too, and that's going to be too much. It's like that's going to be a lot. I will have chief staff, and I'm just that type of hands-on, behind the scenes, making things happen kind of person. So it's important to have those separate roles, and we happen to be we have very little in common, but we make it an insanely effective team.
Can I ask a question that's, I think, related to a lot of this, and something that I'm sure, if this is even considered, voters will want to know. So did you, before the change in government, did you look into what the financial impacts would be? Were they presented at a town meeting? And is it things like adding a position like a chief of staff, or I guess whatever financial impacts that there might be?
Yeah, I think, in the end, there was that discussion. I don't remember a monetary breakdown, if you will, but I think it was after reviewing that the plan involved consolidation, and so
Right,
it actually, it's almost was cheaper overall, but not that they saved money, but they
Yeah.
just shifted it to something like a chief of staff,
Sure.
and maybe a little bigger legal department, and direct legal department, and things like that. So
Okay.
I think there's usually consolidation involved that offsets any of that, and that was the case in Braintree. Again,
great.
they didn't come back and increase the budget
Yeah.
to change the form of government.
They set aside some money though in
We did.
transition.
Yep.
I can't remember how much it was, but it was, or whatever.
It's been 20 years, but I want to say like 400,000 or something. It was around that. I think it was around that.
And was that a one-year transition, or was it a multi-year?
2 years.
Yeah, I think it was because it was kind of in the middle of a fiscal year,
Okay.
You know, January, you know what I mean? So it was the middle of fiscal year, so I think it, you know, and we had already passed the next year's, you know,
Okay.
I think fiscal budget, so, or at least set it for them. Yeah, so there was a year and a half, I was, maybe.
Okay.
Now, you've said a couple times, you feel like there's things you've accomplished in the town of Weymouth that you wouldn't have been able to accomplish if it was still, you know, a board of selectmen or a town manager.
Yeah.
Is an example of how you think that the mayoral form has been more effective in getting something done?
Yeah, and I think it's maybe more general too, and just with the concept of less cooks, kind of that mentality. So, you know, the fact that, you know, we just finished a new middle school that the mayor appointed me as to run the school building committee and as chief of staff. So for 7 years, you know, we took that on because it was a decision we made when we first came in. They had already filed a statement of interest, but when we first got in, they came back to us and asked us if we were, you know, serious about it before they went ahead, and they did it. But he appointed me as chair of the school building committee for that owner, you know, not a negative, but control, but that oversight, that management. And I think that was huge instead of, you know, the different, you know, factions, if you will, being involved in that, especially because we had to do this during the height of the pandemic. And so it was a 252,000 square foot building built for 1,470 kids, $162 million. And we finished on time. And I have $6 million left over in contingency during a pandemic. So I'm not sure that would happen in another form. I know you have to have the school building committee, but not usually the mayor, you know, kind of in charge of it. But it is, I mean, the town is the owner in that case. And so that's why it fell on us, not like the school committee. I mean, the school committee was very part of the committee, but also part of my consultation. So I didn't, you know, it's not like it was, you know, a dictator thing. It happened because of my relationship with the school administration. But
Speaking of the schools, is the mayor the chair of the school committee or just a member of the school committee?
a member of the school committee, not a willing member. It's,
And in Braintree, it was the chair of the school committee initially, I think. wasn't it?
that I don't remember, but I know that's something to look at. That's a lot. You know what I mean? I know you know, it's still our, you know, they give us the budget and we have to do their budget, and it's good to be involved, but that's a lot for a person to be, you know, running the town and trying to, you know, really keep up with everything that's going on in the school department. So you know, you need that relationship, but I don't know how reasonable it is to expect a mayor, especially in the size, you know, Weymouth, to be active as much as people might think he should be as a member of the school committee.
Kind of related to this, and you already gave the good example with the school building. Do you think that there's more responsiveness and less meetings to go through in a mayoral form of government? So, you know, you don't have to wait for a once a month board to meet. So
Yeah. No, that's exactly right, and or a special town meeting.
Right.
You know, something really comes up, and so when you're pursuing different things, maybe like, you know, we first came on board also was, we had a decision, we also built a new library.
Right.
$33 million library, but we had a deadline of a grant, which was already well on the way. We didn't have a lot of time. And we had to make that decision, do we pursue this or not? And I think if we had to go through those other motions, I don't know if we would have had enough time left to actually fill it out and do it right. And it was successful. And so we actually built the $33 million library with a $12 million grant within the tax levy. too. And then I would just say also on the other component of that, I think, and again, it's about the person and the impact and trust that the public has in that person. But actually during the election, I think in 2015, there was an override in Weymouth that failed, a general override, by a fairly good margin. Headland won in 15, came into office in 16, and then 3 years later, we're asking the public for a debt exclusion override, $98 million for the new school. We got a $56 million grant, $98 million override, and we did $10 million within the levy, and that was only because so I could bring the debt exclusion below $100 million, because people like 2 numbers instead of 3. I'll give that little secret away. But it passed with 75%, first override ever in Weymouth, and I know it was a direct result that they saw one person and how they were spending the money over that time, and so they saw that accountability. And I think reacted positively. Whereas, and the other forms of government, it's tough to point to the one person or group that was responsible, good or bad. You know what I mean? And especially if it's bad, you have, the fingers pointing all different ways. But with a mayor, there's only one person you can point to.
And does that also help with speaking to state and federal officials and getting?
And beyond that, anyone, like the developers or anyone that wants to do business in town, they like to talk to the decision maker. And if you don't have that, if you have, oh, yeah, we'd love to do that, but we have to go to town meeting, and get that approval, or have to go to this elected board, and it's not a direct response. They like the including the state, I think, and the Mayor Headland has, we've done a tremendous job in getting grants to help support a lot of what we do. And I think having that direct, interaction and relationship is huge in doing that. And just the efficiency and be able to respond to those opportunities.
One of my questions is, I got elected mayor for 4 years, and then I get defeated by the next mayoral candidate, and so forth and so on. And I guess my belief is if you have a town manager, they're usually there for a good period of time if they're doing a good job creating those relationships. Do you have any comment on that?
I think would be the same. That I would hone in on your comment about doing a good job, and so I think if you're doing a good job at mayor, you're going to get reelected, and if you're doing a good job at town manager, you're going to get a new contract. And so I think it's, again, it's not, the structure's not going to solve all the problems or make everything better. It's still going to be about the people in those positions. And if you're doing, a good job, Mayor Headland was reelected with 80% of the vote. And so I think if you're doing a good job, the voters will respond. And I think it's right that town managers tend to last longer. And again, I get back to it's a lot of work in the mayor form of government, and I can see, the impact it has on the mayor and myself, physically, like, what I mean, as so it's a lot. It's a lot. And so I think it's more of that's the reason maybe you don't run again versus being voted out, because I think if you're voted out, there's usually a pretty good reason.
What positions are Weymouth voters still electing? So there's the mayor, there's the town council, and then school committee,
Yeah, yeah, I think that's,
board of health,
nope,
planning board,
nope,
dog catcher.
nope. I think it's council, school committee, and mayor, right? Yeah,
Okay.
on the town level, yeah.
So planning board, zoning board, conservation are all
Appointed, yeah.
Okay. How does that process work?
Most of them there are some joint appointments where others, maybe the council has not so much those, but have a pick, if you will, that they can appoint someone, but most of those, especially those bigger ones, planning, conservation, health, the mayor, it's all mayoral appointment, but it does get reviewed by the town council, and they can vote, it's 2/3, but they can, reject those appointments with 2/3 vote. But that has actually just happened, but that was more political. It was the voter registrar, actually, that got rejected by the town council. But the great majority of them, go through. And again, as I mentioned earlier, that's the same with, they get to review department head appointments as well. So I don't remember if I was considered a department head, I don't think so. But like, we just hired a new town solicitor, and we put that name before them for their review and approval.
If they reject, they don't counter with a name, the mayor comes back
Nope,
with a new.
yeah, we would have to reappoint.
Do you feel, this is really a biased question, but I mean, do you feel people still have an avenue for feedback? Well, if there's building in their neighborhood, they still have an ability to make their voice heard.
Yeah.
If there's some other policy that they.
Yep. Because even though it's the mayor appointing, those boards, those are still, public, open on local cable, even, that you can show up to and make your comments. The processes, are the same as far as, for building permits and health, all licenses, and, you're still going through those departments and those boards. So the process is the same. It's just not elected. And I think what I look as sort of the benefit of that form of government is, the decisions, I consider less political. And in that, I mean less people worried about an election. To me, that's less political. Like, you don't have decision makers, as many worried about or thinking about election or re-election. And I think that's less political. I understand, again, depending on who gets elected mayor, that some of those appointments can become political. And I've seen that, and where it's a friend or, something, or someone, that, might be somewhat qualified, but not, maybe the best or most experienced, choice. So I get the political part of that, but overall, in running government, decision-making, when you're not really worried about election or re-election, I think it makes a difference. And again, if you have someone like, I think again, Mayor Headland, which, he appoints people and basically lets them do their job. And we're not hovering over them or pressuring. There might be an occasion or two where we want to explain the impacts of certain decisions that may not be known, or have a policy that, we favor, but for the most part, it's, appoint, trust, and let them, do their job.
Is there any way that you would reallocate the balance of power differently between the town council and the mayor's office? I mean,
Take away what little they have.
yeah.
I hope they don't watch it.
Well, it's not on later, so you
Yeah.
could.
They'll find out somehow. No, I don't think I would. And again, it's I keep going back to it, but it's our success over the last 7 years has, it's hard for me to argue anything against that. I mean, I'm not here to, sell what we've done, but it's been pretty remarkable, in the short time. But it is a team effort, and it's everything from keeping, those department heads with the knowledge. It's the relationship for the most part, with the town council, and especially, for me in the budget management, chair and vice chair, and that very good relationship I have there and with others, that, and then just the fiscal management, that we've been able to do, like, a new library, a new school. Our fields and parks are the envy of, the South Shore now. We're $30 million in new roads, and sidewalks. We've taken our stabilization fund from $1 million when we came into office, and now it's up to $9 million. And so and he was elected with, reelected with 80% of the vote, and I'm confident if he decided to run for a third term, he would be successful. And so it's hard in those, terms to think of a better way of doing things.
Any other questions from the board?
Like we've asked quite a few.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. So I think that this has been helpful to me. I hope it's been helpful, informative to the board as well. So I do appreciate you coming in, and chatting with us, and giving us some insight. We'll make sure to send a copy of this over to the Whittle Town Council. Thanks.
Take away there, yeah.
Thank you for coming in very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much.
I think we'll have a couple other things
Hope it
to
was
discuss,
helpful.
but
Take care, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you very
thank you
much.
so much.
I haven't been in the school, but the library's great.
Yes, you should visit the school, it's one of a kind.
Great.
Yeah, it's special.
Thank
Yeah, the library, I moved actually, I moved next to it after we built it.
Oh, you got a new park too, right?
Yeah, I did. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Helpful.
Very.
Yeah. So we'll take that, we'll let it stew, figure out if there's anything else I want to follow up on. In the meantime, I'd like to set in a couple next meeting dates, if possible. I don't think we'll have much time to go through lunch tonight, so I just want to set the next one. If it's okay, I'd like to meet in a couple of weeks, not take a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
How does November 3rd work for people?
Yes, that works. That works for me.
Mr. Shea? All right, so we'll do November 3rd.
It will not work for me though.
No? Okay.
Well, okay.
I have to pick up my sister in Providence. Or take her out back, actually. No, my son's getting married.
All right, I think Rich is away following the previous Thursday. And we got Thursday after that is then day before Veterans Day.
Not coming up too much.
I know. I mean,
Is it always on a Thursday?
No, I was gonna say maybe we can make it. How about Wednesday the 2nd instead?
I have a cable advisory committee at 7, if it's at 6, be there now.
You just want to do that?
yeah, I have a 7 o'clock meeting too. Actually, I can't make it. I'm sorry. I have a community preservation meeting. And
The 1st?
How about I can't do the,
Okay.
how about the 9th?
I can't do the 9th.
10th?
I can't do the time.
I can't.
everybody do the 27th?
No,
No?
it's my anniversary.
So,
I like my husband.
26th?
Yes. Got it.
Yes.
All right. So we'll do a working session 26th, 6 to 7. So then another one,
October 26.
how's November 24th for people?
That's Thanksgiving. Okay.
I'm free.
17th.
Come to your house, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Fine.
17th is good.
Right, and then we'll do another session on November 17th.
If I'm still around.
Yeah.
We'll see.
We can do
That
a
might be
little-
my last
We'll go to
one.
Zoom.
For you,
Yeah.
November what, 17th?
17 is a Thursday.
both at 6.
That's good.
Mr. Shea, do you have any thoughts?
This is on I'm here on a question of the mayor's
Yep.
proposal. How many people responded to the survey?
About 180, which is more than usually show up for town meeting.
What?
About 180.
Okay, and how would, I heard 1/3 of them opposed, to set as mayor?
1/3 indicated they would support a mayor form of government, yeah.
Yeah. And what were the other people opposed?
I think the just under 50% said board of selectmen and town manager.
Okay. What the others that they,
The other was a town council, town administrator type.
would be saying, the current thing, basically, was
Kind of like, it was kind of like what Bridgewater has.
okay. Did somebody come run for you tonight to talk about this?
He was already in, we started at 6.
Oh, I saw it was 7.
Yeah, so we had a great conversation though, it'll be up online.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, the charter review committee, are you going to be proposing these things for the spring town meeting?
Yes.
Would this be one of the things you propose?
So if we decided this was an avenue the town should pursue, I think we would then extend the deadline to do our work until 2024, which is what statutorily the schedule we're on. We're actually early in the review cycle. If we felt there needed to be a change, that we would extend this for another year and make other recommendations, and there'd be a formal proposal in the 2024 town meeting. But as of now, I'm not sure we're convinced that this needs to go much further.
Yeah, that's fair. We haven't had that fight, like, in-depth conversation yet.
Yeah. And again, as I said before, I think the reason we held this tonight was just so we did our due diligence. We felt it raised to the level where we couldn't just ignore it or brush it off. Needed to at least have that next conversation, and I don't know if any of us have changed minds, but we'll take a couple weeks and review and reflect and see where we come down on it.
Where was the survey distributed? I didn't see it.
It was at town meeting, it was online, it was emailed out, and it was at the senior center.
Okay.
So.
Were there any comments on it where people saw it one after another with it?
Not specifically, I think a lot of it reflected, people have concerns about accountability, kind of where the buck stops with certain decisions, the appointment process. So it was kind of a handful of issues, but none specifically said, because of this, I want a mayor.
Is there restrictions in the state law what you can do with the mayor, you know, is what we're looking at, mayor, and sometimes town council too, or just mayor?
It's a little bit up to the town to decide. You know, Weymouth still technically has a town meeting. It's not, doesn't have much power, and people don't go to it, but technically it still has a town meeting. But it would be kind of be up to the review group to figure out if it's a mayor and 5 councilors, 10 councilors, 12 councilors, how that would work. There's flexibility given to the local government.
Okay.
And Will, I'm conscious that you need to run.
Yeah.
So if, Pete, could you just take a couple of minutes worth of notes, just as we're finishing
Yeah,
up here?
I'll give it another couple of minutes,
Okay.
but
Okay, one more question I have is, if we didn't go to a mayor, would that in itself necessarily mean the current elected boards, such as assessors, board of health, would those go away or could they be retained?
They could be retained. It's my understanding. It would be up to,
yeah, I think,
town.
I think, Joe, that these questions are beyond what we've talked about so far.
I just, yeah.
But, yeah, but I think that that would all be part of whatever the proposal would be.
Yeah, but there's no pre-existing boundary that you would have to follow, either or.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, local choice tool.
Yeah.
And the gentleman was in from Braintree. How much power does the mayor and Braintree have? Does he do all the appointments and does he need approval of the council?
So he is the chief of staff in Weymouth, and in Weymouth, the mayor does all the appointments, and the town council can essentially veto an appointment
Two-thirds.
with a 2/3 vote.
In fact, that's what we have.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I don't like about the town manager thing, that the only way you can knock out a person who's going to recommend you is you have to have 80%, because you have to have 4 out of 5.
Yeah.
Right. In Weymouth, the council's larger, it's 11.
So they need 9 votes, you say? 8 votes.
7.
8 votes.
That's actually good. Okay, so that's a little bit less than what we have in the percentage retail. How long have they had it? I know Wayne was got it now, I think, like 9.
12 years at least, because he talked about 3 terms, maybe 4, 12 to 16 years. Because the current mayor's been there for 7.
2,000 sounds about, oh, no, no,
3 mayors, 6 terms total. So, I
no.
think
So
that's,
24 years.
24 years.
no.
Yeah, that's about right.
3
90.
years.
Okay.
That
How
sounds
many,
right.
6 years? Well,
4 years
4-year
per
term.
term, so 6 terms, so just the 22 to 24 years.
I didn't think about that. Yeah.
Is there any towns at Abington size that has a structured government?
Yes. Trying to remember which one is the closest. I know Amesbury has one, and it's not much bigger, it's, 22,000 or something, but there's at least one town in Massachusetts, I think, that has a mayor that's small.
Smaller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Out in the western part of it.
How long did it take to, and Braintree to get to do the research and get it up and going?
That was a long process in Braintree. It was 8-9 year process that they took. And, but that was kind of indicative of the problems Braintree was having, which it just took years and years to do anything. Weymouth, I think it took to happen much quicker. I think it was a 3 or 4 year process. But, yeah, they went to, I think as you said, they had a informal survey, then they had a 2-year process to create the proposal, and then they had votes, and then they had to actually do the election.
That was a 2-year process because they did it
Yeah.
mid-year,
Yeah.
mid-fiscal year.
Well, how many people here John speak for Braintree?
You.
I didn't hear him.
Right, nobody.
I thought, so that's over 7. But I can see it on TV.
Yeah.
And I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think if this ends up being a topic that we pursue, we could definitely have speakers back to present again.
I would invite one of their longtime counselors and someone from Braintree,
Yeah,
but this is a good starting
I think
place.
you want, well, I would try and get people from Braintree and Queens. But also, I mean, especially if it's a town, the towns our size, how work, obviously, one question you're gonna get into is how this is gonna work. A mayor in itself will not be may not be a person experienced in the intricacies of town management, such as the town manager is. So you're gonna need a town manager type person in there and like the mayor.
Yep, yeah, that was discussed.
But again, we're just.
No, I'm just raising some questions.
Right,
But yeah, he said that there's the mayor, and then he still needs an administrative
he's chief of staff.
person. What form that is, don't know. You know. So. I do want to bring this to an end, just to be respectful. Please come back at our next meeting. We have lots to talk about. I know you'll be a source of information on some of the things we want to discuss.
Yeah.
So specifically, I want to invite you back to our next meeting.
When would that be?
What did we say it was?
October 26th.
October 26th.
It's at 6 o'clock.
Anniversary.
November 17th.
November 17th.
6 o'clock.
Everybody's so busy.
I know.
All right, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
But anybody in addition to you,
What?
is this the only thing that can be agenda for the 17th to 26th?
No, we'll probably go back to probably discussing a lot of the ongoing proposals. And I can pass them along to you if you want to see them at a time.
Yeah, I would like to do that. But the other thing you may want to do is get the information to Scott, the town manager. You may want to announce it at the town, at the selectmen's meeting. What you don't want is people come out and say, this came from nowhere.
No, they're going to say it no matter what.
Well, you do your best to get on there and have them announce it. Here's the things we're looking at. You don't have to just concentrate on that, but other things you're looking at.
Yeah, we've announced through Selectmen, we were on the radio, we were in the newspaper, we're on the website, we're on social media for this meeting. Aside from knocking on doors, I'm not sure what else we could do to get people out there.
So,
So,
maybe, what's your name?
Amanda, nice to meet you.
What's your last name?
Hardigan?
Okay. Yeah, I know everybody knows, so.
all right, I'm going to take a motion to adjourn.
He made the motion. I'll second it.
Second, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned.